Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind. What's up, and welcome to episode 110 of The Rewind. It's time for your weekly recap of the news, views, and content surrounding Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms. This week, we're talking about the art and world building update we got in the July development update stream from VR. We're discussing a philosophical issue, and we're heading back to the campfire to continue the tale of Thale and Greyborn in the Dead Storm Valley. So set your sights on the heights of Avendir's Pass and join me, Theric, and my ascending co-host, Desrin, in this week's Rewind. All right, Desrin, I have an update on the holiday plan.
Ooh.
I did nothing. I got nothing.
I was about to be like, okay. Let me live vicariously through you. Oh, well, okay, that works. That works too.
I mean, I have so many distractions in my life. That's the problem. I have fun distractions, and sometimes I feel like I feel like doing something. I want to do what I feel in that moment. I don't always want to follow the list. And so I read half the book I had earmarked. I played some games, but not the ones I intended. I tried to do it, but it ended up not being exactly to the plan, but that's fine. I was busy doing nothing, which was good.
Yeah, nice amount of spontaneity. That's pretty good.
That's right. You got to be spontaneous. You got to live in the moment, I say. You know who else is living in the moment?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Our adventuring party, or should I say raid party, because it's huge again every week. And so here is some of them. We have Ziplocs on the Darkmer Rogue, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Code on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scar Bard, Wiki-Woo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Horsosaurus on the Human Warrior, Fury Wrath on the Archai Summoner, Pavejo on the Gnome Wizard, and Feldrin on the Darkmer Paladin. And I want to say congratulations as well to Jack Whisper, who won themselves a Watcher's Pledge during the premiere last week. And in fact, it was kind of funny, actually, because speaking to them afterwards, they told me they had their whole family was there for the show. And I remember during the chat seeing all the Whisper, different names with Whisper as the last name. And when I talked to them afterwards, they said, yeah, that was like my family. They were all coming out, and they're all going to play Pantheon together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? A family that plays together stays together. I am a strong believer in that. If I had more gamers in my family, we might be a little we might be extra.
Your vacation
well
might
off.
be a little more family.
Yeah,
family
exactly.
You could say family oriented if you're gaming together. That's totally right.
100%. Totally. So I really was encouraged to hear that, and I enjoyed speaking to them. So if you want to join the adventure party / raid party, you can do so via the super chat, and you can also do so by going to our Patreon campaign if you can't be around for the premiere, so you can enter that way too. But again, any support is always welcome, and we appreciate each and every one of you for just being here and hanging out with us today. So we got a big show, lots to talk about. So having said all that, Desrin, you ready to start the climb?
Let us ascend.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. Awesome. So VR news and notes. Okay, so we got the VR July developer stream that came on Thursday, July 14th. As I said, it was called Worldbuilding and Art Update. But as usual, there's more going on here than just some pretty pictures. We did get some really significant news, and we got a few beans dropped in chat during the stream, and as well on Pantheon Plus U afterwards. So we're going to hit some of those highlights. Now let's start with the VR team continuing to expand, and that's something we've commented on now several weeks in a row, Des.
Oh yeah.
This week we got to see a ton of new concept art from Brett Knuckles, one of VR's newly hired environment concept artists. So they showed the port of Thronefast, a Corsairian temple, the town of Avelia, and a few more places as well. And we actually saw not only his artwork, but we also saw a 3D rendering of his artwork, which he did as well. So he's apparently a man of very many talents, which is great to see them hiring people with multifaceted abilities. Speaking of 3D models, we also saw one of the other newly hired VR staffers. That's Leonardo Evangelisti, environment artist and world builder. So these were the modular houses and the building kits that they showed. and they've referenced those on the previous streams as being highly important to their world building process. So it's, overall, like, it was a really nice showcase for the new artists on the team. And Desrin, something you and I had suggested actually that they should do once the new team members were sort of on board and everybody was up to speed. Now, I mean, the concept art looked great, and I don't want anybody to think I wasn't happy with it. I think they're very talented folks. But honestly, I'll give you my first reaction when I saw the concept art. I was a little confused. And the reason I was confused is because, we sort of think in a linear fashion about concept art. We're used to seeing it of places that haven't been built in game yet as used to build those places. But the ones we saw were of Thronefest and Avelia. And those are both places that we know exist in game form because we've seen them. They did go on to say a little later that the purpose of these was to further develop those areas thematically. Mm-hmm. So it kind of made sense more as time goes on. But, I guess my initial reaction was I feel like concept art doesn't really exemplify progress when, these streams are sort of labeled as development updates. So I'm not being critical, but I am saying that, I'm not sure about the process here really conveyed a development update. But let me ask you, Des, what did you think of this?
I think a lot of people were feeling a bit of apprehension at first when we kind of started out the stream with a bunch of concept art, and I agree. Like it kind of hits a little different at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And but yeah, I think the fact is that it was from a new artist, first of all, so that is kind of, in my opinion, a plus. Is it's saying, hey, we have a new person on the team. Let's show some of their work. And so being it's from a new person, it feels a little bit like progress. But again, like you said, seeing concept art for areas that we've technically seen in game already without like a lot, they didn't really explain the process so much. I do see why it could feel a little bit like odd, at first.
Yeah. I think Minus made a comment. I think he realized as they were saying it, like he realized sort of that it needed to be sort of contextualized a little bit, and did make a comment about it. But at that point I was, I think I was still sort of like trying to understand, why is there concept art for something we've seen before? And it goes back to, reminds me of the stream where they showed the gate, right? And they were talking about how using that concept art and the layers that go into it, right? You had the basic, and then you had the overlay, and on top of that, and they would go through these different stages with it to try to build out the scene. So, I recalled that later on, and like, again, every time we watch the streams, I always have more, after I've had some time to reflect on it, I feel a little bit more, a little better about it, I guess. So taking that into account, there was lots of commentary as well from VR on Pantheon Plus U. Just sort of, I think Chris Rowan was very clear, and I didn't clip his comments here, but he did talk about, the philosophy behind it. It's not about the thing that they're showing in the concept art. It's about the, what's going on there. What is the,
it's adding a bit of
scene,
context.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if it's a building, it's not about the building. They may have the building gray boxed, but it's about how do we see this feeling in game?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to remember who said it, but there was it might have been on the Plus U when someone pointed out, like, we've seen a lot of concept art for specific things out of their context, and a lot of this art was more in context to capture like the feeling of being in a place and kind of just the overall layouts and stuff like that. But I do want to kind of touch on this because there is an element of placeholder, either art or, I don't want to say gray box because it's not always gray box, but assets that are, placed like, hey, this is good now, this is playable, etc. And then to go back and be like, all right, we can iterate on this. And I see this kind of process as being iterative, where, hey, we have what we have now, let's put it in and kind of feel it out. And then it makes your iteration process even more effective because you've felt it already. And now you can adjust. And I think the concept art was obviously not like, these aren't pieces that probably even took a day, right? And they're more to really quickly illustrate a vision based on some things that are there, some things that are not there, to, again, iterate on the process. So with that kind of
perspective.
Yeah, with that kind of perspective, I feel like this actually makes a lot more sense to see the flow of building out something to completion, because there might even be another concept pass once things are placed for additional decoration or final art, basically, right? And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see concept of Avelia once more. Maybe not, but it is that kind of iterative approach that I think actually creates some really solid POIs, so it's not a one and done and then we never touch it again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of explanation at the beginning could have been really set the tone.
Oh, yeah.
For
Yeah,
it,
probably.
rather than here's our monthly update, a bunch of concept art, because we didn't know this other stuff was coming. Right. So
Right.
When you take the whole thing in its entirety, it makes more sense. So,
And on that note, actually, because we didn't know it was coming, it kind of forms a certain narrative for the stream that you only really get after you've watched the whole thing, which it's totally something that could be good, could be bad, right? Because you're not going to get to show the whole narrative until, or like if someone just like clicks off the stream, they're like, oh yeah, another concept art. I honestly don't think that really is going to happen too much, but there might be
it's something to consider.
Yeah, it's something to think about, and a quick explanation might have done well for. But the fact is, it's not concept art's not the only thing we saw, right?
That's right. That's right. And exactly. So like, yeah, you said it's not the only thing we saw, and it wasn't all just visuals of other stuff too, because there was actually a huge piece of news here. And that is that VR has added Steve Clover to their team as a senior programmer. Now, the website's already been updated to reflect this. If you go and check it out at pantheonmmo.com, I was not, and really am still not that familiar with who Steve is, but many, many people are. And Joppa talked about this a lot. He said he was one of the co-creators of EverQuest. He worked closely with Brad MacLeod on a lot of EQ's design, coding, and map layout. And then on Pantheon Plus U in chat, Joppa added in that Steve's reputation and his specific contributions to EverQuest are ridiculously underrated and largely unknown. They said it's a massive win for our team and for this project. So, and Chris Rowan as well was there and chimed in and added that Steve actually named EverQuest.
Yeah.
Like,
and a lot of other things apparently too. Yeah.
That is unbelievable. I never knew that, which is unbelievable that I didn't know that. So this guy is like, a legend in the industry and somebody that VR is exceptionally lucky to have, it sounds like. The community, like I said, has reacted really well to this news. People are really excited. I can't comment on its credentials because I don't know, but I do trust people who do have commented. Like Nathan Napalm was really excited on Plus U about this, and he knows the industry better than I do, I would say, and a lot of people do actually. It sounds like Steve brings a lot to the table is the bottom line. But there are a couple points here I do think we can make that make this even more interesting. Firstly, Nathan made a point on the show which bears repeating, and that is big names attract investor attention, or just attention in general. And as you know, Des, Brad's name being attached to this project really can't be understated when it comes to public interest, or when
totally true,
at least in the early stages of it, right? And as it goes on, it's still in his legacy being built. And so I think this is massive from an industry and investment angle. And that's one point. The other point is that Pantheon needs programmers, period. As much as we've, seen Kyle's magic, he's still one guy. And, with Steve's name added to the programming section of their website, Pantheon now has 4 people listed under the programming section. So no matter how talented they are, and they're all exceptionally talented, I'm sure, MMOs aren't programmed by 4 people, So maybe they've found some magic to make it happen with, this small of a programming team, but any expansion to the programming team can't be bad. So Desmond, let me ask you, are you familiar with who Steve Clover is? And then what are your thoughts on this addition to the team?
Well, I mean, I gotta be totally honest, is that I only kind of vaguely know of Steve because he worked on Vanguard and EQ, of course. But I actually just kind of found out that he was involved in like War Wizard, which is, I'm sorry that I don't know more about War Wizard, other than it was, a big part of Brad and him getting on the EverQuest team and all that stuff. But I know that Steve was senior programmer for, I I think all of those titles. And that's pretty insane because that's quite a span of experience. But I'm not the kind of person to like be really starstruck. Not to say I don't really respect. Respect Brad and Steve, but to me, it's more of just like a sensible thing. I think a few people on the VR team seem to have known Steve in the past. Some quite a bit, it seems. Like a lot of the team members over the years have been hired because they have worked together before or knew each other. So it kind of makes sense for him to be involved. And I think Joppa did say that like Steve reached out to them. So there's something about Pantheon that Steve is interested in.
That's a really important point. I'm so glad you brought that up. I forgot that. You're totally right. And that is really significant.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it is a testimony to, the state of the game right now is interesting to a big player in EverQuest, classic MMOs, Vanguard, probably more projects. Cause I think, was it Chris Rowan alluded to like Steve has kind of like, I've been not incognito. There's another word for that, but like he seems to be like either biding his time or working on all other like unrelated projects. I'm just totally like going off context here, but like Steve kind of reminds me of like a sleeper agent. Now, like for some reason he's been awoken.
He's been awoken. The dragon has risen from the lair of slumber and is now prepared to re-enter the arena of game development. I mean, it's fun to think of it like that, right?
Yeah, but all that to say, like, I don't know too much about him, but, he's obviously someone very respected. And I'm really glad that Nathan kind of pointed out that a lot of these things, even if I'm not starstruck, like, they do matter for investors, right? Investor opinion. And bottom line is someone that has shipped titles, even if some shipped better than others, I think it does speak pretty loudly, and my hopes that kind of reputation really serves VR well. And I do trust the devs that have spoken well about him, right? We've been over this journey with these people for long enough that I feel like they have shown that they have really good judgment on team members. So I think he's going to be a great fit for the team. Obviously very experienced. And I mean, I know this announcement is kind of like a really major highlight of the stream, even though it was kind of it was almost mentioned in passing. I don't want to say in passing, but I'm sure you'll understand if I don't kind of usher in Steve as some like savior of the project, but
no, I don't think anybody's saying the savior of the project. I think what's being emphasized is that it's like a team trading for a really good player, right? Like, and they didn't have to give up anything. It's just that it makes your team better, right? It just makes your team better. So the project wasn't in trouble, but that's not to say that they don't need a programming team that is more than 3 people.
Yeah,
they clearly do. And so
I mean, it's definitely a big win. I don't want to minimize that or anything, or like say I'm like not a fan, or like
look, there's a spectrum. There's Nathan Napalm excited.
Yeah, Nathan Bounty Code. I'm gonna call out Bounty Code.
Oh yeah, who Bounty Code there
basically
too.
Didn't sleep last night apparently because he's so excited about Steve Clover.
I played EverQuest with Bounty this morning. He's still just as excited. He hasn't even calmed down.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's on the spectrum, but like, you don't have to be, falling out of your chair to recognize this as an important thing. And I just can't wait to, get to know him more as we have with other team members.
Yeah. And we might be getting to know him. This wasn't specifically said, but Minus kind of mentioned that the DRT will be more of a special interview.
He did. He did. And I brought it up. Yeah, I brought it up on Plus U as well. Yeah. And maybe sure would be cool, so don't know. But that's a really cool piece of news. But let's get back to the eye candy here, because this is my personal favorite moment from the stream. We got our first look at Silent Plains, at a new zone. It's something that we've been told has been in development for quite a while, but never have seen. And we got this beautiful high angle shot looking
my
out,
gosh.
looking east over the zone. And it's, what's even better is that if you stuck around for Pantheon Plus U, Joppa shared an even wider shot angle than we saw on the live stream on VR stream with us on Pantheon Plus U. And it goes wider and you can actually see more of Wild's End, more of that on both sides. It's really cool. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing it right now because I'm going to put it in the video reel here. So it's basically like a little bit of a Pantheon Plus exclusive, which is cool. Man, like places we haven't seen before, like Vale of Azure, so you can see out off in the distance, and then Throne Fast and some of the parts they talked about in Avendir's Pass. Tons of little details. And during the stream, I did make a lore mistake, which I was ashamed of. And I called these rocky outcroppings that you're seeing, I called them grandfather thorns. And Joppa stepped in to correct me, as he should, saying there's only one grandfather thorn and it's not in this shot. He said these smaller thorns are actually deicide thorns, which I knew and I'd just forgotten because, I think I said it last week, the lore doesn't fall out of my head. Well, I was incorrect. It does fall out of my head occasionally. So I had a little bit of a lore slip there, but this is, like I said, eye candy, but it's not about the visuals so much for me. It's about the scope. When they talk about having a sense of this huge world to explore and a sense of arrival, is the way that Joppa has said it before. This is what it means to me. This kind of an image. Now, practically, it's huge as well in terms of the sections of the King's Reach map are all sort of falling into place a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. Will we see every zone of King's Reach before alpha? No, probably not. Just because we aren't seeing them, remember, that doesn't mean they aren't done. And, you'll look at the roadmap to alpha that they have on the website, and they've talked about all the zones being basically blocked out to 100%, right? We do this when we cover the newsletter every week.
Yeah.
And so the landscapes are there. There's just no detail in them yet. That's what that means. So this Silent Plains is now gone beyond that stage and is now looking quite nice. And I don't know how much more, obviously there's more to be developed here and more to go into it. But what was your reaction, Des, to this beautiful screenshot?
Oh, dude, this was totally one of my favorite parts of the stream, among many favorite parts, if I can cheat a little bit. But so actually, oddly, this is my first thought when we were watching it live, and it was because Joppa said it was taken from the far western side of Silent Plains, right?
Right.
Which I actually initially thought that Joppa was like misspeaking or something, because like I see the body of water in there, which we can also see on the terrain map that we got a while ago, but there's like no rivers going to it. And like, so he did say it's still pretty early on, but I'll admit, kind of in my head, Silent Plains looked a bit more like open and desolate than what we have. Like going by the concept art we've seen, it's just beautiful concept art, by the way. I love the Silent Plains concept art. But like, I wouldn't say it's like a bad thing or anything. And actually, after kind of investigating it a little bit more, and hailing back to when Jop was talking about, he tried to put a player character model on one of the thorns, and he took it out because it was just, you couldn't even really see it. And so I think it might actually be the size of the thorns being just so insanely huge that it's like messing with my perspective on the whole shot, because like it could still very much look like plains, but those thorns are just so stinking huge that to me it looks more like a forest right now.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like if you were actually shrunk down and put on this map, it would look like a plane, because the way, you're so small and it's going to be flat from your perspective in the game. But from this shot, I think it sort of condenses the size a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Fool our perspective a little bit. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So that's a really good observation.
Well, speaking of perspective, because that's actually my other big point about this shot, is that in a way we are looking at like a quarter of King's Reach, if not more. So like obviously we're going to be missing a lot that's like behind the mountains, all the cliffs, but as far as like the direction, we're looking from the west side of Silent Plains, it seems, towards Throne Fast. So that's like kind of northeast, right? But it's a pretty wide shot. So, on our left, we would be kind of seeing the fringes of the Roans. on the right, we're seeing a pretty good chunk of Wild's End. Not the whole thing, but I mean, this shot is just so crazy. You see Sorhireth, the trees and little pieces, and they point out that you can see the I don't want to say wizard tower. I almost the magical
like the
tower
starting.
that is in the northern part of Thronefast, way off in the distance.
Yes.
Like, it is so tiny, but it is present.
Yes.
And we're seeing all that with this huge camera angle, crazy draw distance, and not much atmospheric distortion, which I think that's actually kind of part of why the shot kind of fools you with scale a little bit, because it's kind of like the opposite of your side mirrors, right? The shot actually makes things look closer than they actually are in some parts of the shot. And I think the only other MMO I can think of that I've seen this kind of draw distance, especially with the lack of like atmospheric distortion, is Mortal Online 2, which has that same effect. Like, you look out over this huge, vast expanse, and you're like, yeah, those mountains look pretty close. And then you start walking, and they don't get bigger,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many details in this image. Like, even for the unfinished zones, like, if you get a chance, we post that full resolution image on our Discord. So just download it and zoom in and just check out all these spaces, and all the little points of interest that are already starting to crop up. Even in, this is very in progress, obviously, right? It's not going to just be empty space. We're not, like, this isn't a shot of, well, hey, look how far away Thronefest is from Silent Plains. Look at all that, footwork you're going to have to do. No.
Yeah.
They're already putting content in. Yeah. So I'm really ranting, but I want to also kind of make note, because it all looks very brown right now, right? And which kind of makes it look a bit samey. And it was confirmed that they're going to continue to build out the zones, obviously, and there's going to be a lot more differentiating between the areas, so it's not all just like brown, But yeah, I mean. Yeah. Holy moly.
It's pretty nice. It's pretty easy to just stare at it for a while. But yeah, you made a good point. I mean, talking about the colorization, Joppa did comment on that in Plus U, just agreeing with you because you brought it up on the show. There's going to be some improvements there with regard to colorization. So it's not it's not quite going to have the same tones that it will, as development goes on.
Again, like, as kind of like magnificent as it is, it's still in progress, right? And
yeah.
And I think, okay, so, sorry, one more thing. But so something I'm really looking forward to, this shot, like, just really encapsulate something that I think a lot of people didn't get from the Wild's End fly-through, if you remember that, like, a long time ago. That's that, like, Pantheon is not a tech demo. The Wild's End, to me, felt more like a tech demo. This feels like a reality. This is what Pantheon is capable at this time. So we're not only getting huge zones, but packed zones. They're already putting POIs. Like, just look at the silent place. Like, there's already like so many places you could be like, yep, that's a camp. That's a camp. That's a POI. That's probably significant. That's there. And Joppa was like, no, this is like really, really early. So there's just an insane amount of hidden areas, just POIs, just all while the engine is totally capable of showing us what's all the way on the horizon. That tower is an asset, and it's showing up. So I think I could objectively say that shot is impressive, and that feels so good to say about Pantheon.
Yeah, and you're not easy to please. You have a critical eye, and you are a perfectionist, which is one of the reasons I respect you so much, because you have high standards. So for you to say that is awesome. But if you're watching this again, I'm cycling the video in the background from all the video we saw last night, or Thursday night, I should say. But it's just all of it looks great. Some of those shots of Aventur's Pass are absolutely amazing, and not just screenshots, a video, right? Like, we're actually seeing rendered video. So it looks awesome. Anyway, so that was the main points, and there was a lot more shown. But in the interest of time, I just want to give a couple final thoughts on the stream, having had some time to reflect. Like I said earlier, it started off a bit meh, but they really gave a sense of progress with the visuals, and you love to see that. We always want what we don't get. So we don't see visuals, we want visuals. If we get visuals, we want hardcore development stuff. But anyway, here's my critique of this stream, and I like to keep things balanced. And nothing was said about Vinyl and their network's implementation. Right?
Yeah.
I was shocked that they didn't even mention it, that it wasn't even brought up. Like, oh, we'll have something in the newsletter next week about it. That really surprised me, because it makes me wonder whether it's been successfully implemented. There was a slight delay. We know that. They talked about it. They pushed it to the end of June. But that's the last word we've had on it. Not mentions, not a comment, nothing. They had 500 people watching the stream last night. I've said it before, this is their biggest venue in terms of their public awareness. So it makes me nervous. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I'm going to hope that when the newsletter comes next week, we'll get an update on it. I mean, I think that we have to. I think that would be way more glaring of an omission if it's not in the newsletter. But here, for me, I still noticed it, and I was still a little bit in the back of my mind having some concerns, and I still am. So what do you want to throw in there on that, or any other final thoughts you have for this one, Des?
Well, I think I would agree that it is a little bit frustrating that somehow slipped their minds, I guess. I would assume. It's just, whoops. But it's obviously something the community is waiting on, pretty much with bated breath, I would say. It's just become such a milestone, right? And that this was just like a concept art stream. Like, if it was just a concept art stream with no mention of Vinyl, I'd be so much more critical. but we really did see a lot of progress elsewhere. And I guess while I'm always going to be like starved for gameplay footage, you'll note that I didn't critique that. Because we did see gameplay footage last stream. So I'm honestly thinking that it's working, and they've just kind of already moved on and maybe slipped their mind, or they're just like, oh, it's in the newsletter, they'll get it then. But yeah, we really should have got some kind of public mention of it, instead of having to wait for the newsletter.
Yeah. Just a little tag at the end saying, hey guys, we know you're want to know about this, and we were aware of that, and we're going to be talking about it in the newsletter, so stay tuned. Just the omission is a little bit noticeable.
And like people that are particularly like waiting for those things, right? Because people they really attach to those milestones, and that makes it even more emphasized, right? But I'm actually not too worried about that. I just agree it would have been nice, but as far as other things, though, I'm gonna warn our viewers right now, because I'm already feeling like this is going to be a bit of a long one. You guys have said before that you don't mind when it goes a bit long, but there's so much in this stream that I really want to shout out some details, and because this stream just keeps on giving. So are you
you got to be you
okay, like buckle up then, like
Desmond's about to go off. Here we go.
So first off, these cliffs, this is a huge geological change for that region. And yes, I said region. I've kind of settled on that. So the region of Thronefast, Avendir's Pass, and
the realm
of Thronefast, and possibly more, but at least that whole like northeast section of Kingsreach. I think I really, really like this, the kind of the cliffy terraced look. And I think it makes the region look really unique, right? Whereas before I feel like it was less unique. It actually looked very much like Wild's End, just, slightly different. So, as I said on the Plus U, I wouldn't want the entire continent to be like that. So, throw that in here again. But for now, I think it actually makes that whole area feel really unique. And there's something about that cliffy. It looks like, things were like forced up, from the earth, like regardless of if that's like how it is. But like there's a sense of something happened to the earth, and I don't know.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of history, right? A sense of
it does.
tectonic activity of some sort. That's what I brought up on Plus U, as I talked about how cool this kind of an effect would be in like white thaw in an Arctic region where you've got a similar look, but it would obviously be in, covered in snow and ice. I think this could really look cool in that kind of a biome too. And I think it looks really good here. Just the aesthetic is really neat, and it sort of, like you say, it tells a story.
Yeah,
just by looking at it.
Well, take it from Theric. Just color it all white, and that's your continent of white thaw. Easy peasy.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Take those North Tusk orcs, bring them from green to white. We got some Arctic orcs, and take the gray box the raccoon and put some white on him, and you're good to go.
There you go. Modern MMO development right there.
That's right.
Oh wow. So alongside that little tidbit, I think this kind of encapsulates the whole stream is not only the prettiness of it, but what it means for gameplay. I mean, more flat places kind of just means it's just easier to put extra content. And I'm really expecting a ton of POIs where there would otherwise not, it would just have been a steep, unusable mountain slope, right? And they did show the little cliffside dwellings as well. So it's like they kind of get so much more room to put things.
It does. It makes a huge difference. Imagine climbing up where we saw that gem, that node.
Yeah.
What if instead of the node being in there, what if it was like a single crevasse where it was like just wide enough for one person to get through, and like it was led into this huge like inside the mountain kind of area?
Oh my gosh.
Like, what if that was because it would be so hidden? It wouldn't be found for a long time. I think that would be a coolest thing.
And that was a theme in the stream, by the way, was they really want to make stuff that either people won't be able to get to for a long time or that are just hidden, and, being an MMO, it can only happen so long, but with all the different factors, like this kind of stuff can actually happen in this game. And I guess my hope is that they can kind of take the outlook that they've adopted for this northeastern part of King's Reach and take it to the other regions without making them all terraced, right? But like I'm wanting to see like some real mountains. Like my examples are like going from Three Rivers Village up to Bordenar's Cleft in Vanguard, or Steerhad even, which is a whole other thing. But in Black Desert Online, they actually did I would say their environment so well in BDO. But going through mountain ranges in BDO is actually, it feels like you're really going up into a mountain range. Like I backpack in real life. Or you used to, and it encapsulates that really well. So, I want to see those switchbacks, cut in trails up the side of the mountain, just like kind of caves and hidden, mountain glades and just ridges and draws and just everything that makes a mountain range so mysterious. And I just think there's so many great examples of that. But if they can bring that kind of density that they're getting from the terraced sections to the rest of Terminus to fill in all those gray spaces that we see on that, the terrain map that we got a long time ago, I would be just so impressed.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. Sparrow on stream brought up a really good point. Then Joppa agreed with her, saying the difference that making these plateau design, these sort of terrace designs, is that you can see over and like through to other areas. Like you can now, it's not like getting to on the side of a mountain where you're just blocked, by other mountains. Like this gives your vision so much more, range. There's so many more things you could potentially see. Like you're saying, seeing all these little interesting details in the environment that you maybe wouldn't have been able to see before. Now you can climb up to the first plateau and you can look and see some things, and then get to the next plateau and it reveals more things. Like that sort of graduated, revealing of the environment is very cool.
I would agree. And I would say even the cliffy stuff that we've seen, I would almost argue that it does both. It also helps occlude things as well. Because you can imagine, going into one of those little kind of, what would you call it? The little encapsulated sections. And, you could see all the cliffs from that point of view, but then it just hard blocks, what's on top of the plateau that you might be looking up at. there's just so much possibility for hidden things. And like, I think that really means so much for like replayability. Going back to the zones you've been to before. The shots from Thronefast and Avenir's Pass that we've seen in this stream, they kind of indicate that it's going to be really easy to see things and miss things when you're just running around at ground, especially at ground level, right? Like if you can imagine going at the lowest level, there's kind of like, I would almost imagine like a road. I don't know if there's actually a road, but there's a few shots that seem to be like, this is the ground level, like kind of traversal area. And you would miss so much if you just stuck to that. So it is so encouraging you to explore, and I can't wait to see their interpretation of that gameplay philosophy translated elsewhere. Like,
No, it's exciting, man. That's what I'm here for. That's the kind of content I'm here for, 100%.
Yeah,
I will never get sick of stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, actually, on that kind of same note, I'm really glad that they showed this, but that node you mentioned, halfway up the cliff, I think it is. I mean, I think it's more than just like an example, right? Than hey, this is a place that you're gonna go in game. Hey, surprise! You already know there's something here. But I think it's more just like an example of something really important that says a lot about not only like the possibilities of of hidden things or just hard to reach things, but more just kind of that philosophy on gathering. Cause it's kind of like, like what's that over there? Like, I wonder if I can get to it, because you're going to, you might see that from quite a vantage point. Right. But then you have to play the game of, how do I get there?
Exactly.
Just like, compare that to the traditional concept of, you have a harvesting loop, right? So very different approaches to gathering, I think.
Yeah. Well, you got to, challenge, right? It's in the tenets, make it challenging, not just combat.
Yeah, not just
everything
combat.
Is challenging.
That's right.
Everything's challenging.
Yeah. Well, I have to point that out for Nefel's sake, because I'm sure he really is trying to shake it up a bit. And so starting to see a little bit of that, right? But also, dude, they showed Mad Run. Which is technically a new reveal. I should have done some research into this, but I think it's a new reveal. But if anything, like, oh man, I just wish I could say more about this locale. But like, I'm just really excited that this place is that it is as it is.
So there is some information on Mad Run out there. It's, first of all, it's on that King's Reach map that we've seen, the topographical one. You can see where it connects between Avenir's Pass and the Eastern Plains. And then there was a newsletter 2019, 2020, that they gave a few details about it. They were talking in the context of dungeons with multiple exit points. And Mad Run was brought up as an example. So I used that in one of my videos a little while ago, that I actually meant to go back and look at it before we started recording, but I didn't. But you're going to see it in an upcoming video that I'm doing too, because I'm going to go back and revisit that.
Nice, man. Because I like just the feeling of that place. And I'm sure, they seem to like crank up the fog a little bit there, but like that stuff is probably going to be somewhat dynamic, right? And that also adds to the whole like replayability. But like, now that I have this like visual of Mad Run, it's so appropriate, because I'm just thinking of that run from Thronefast, to Eastern Plains or vice versa, it's going to be treacherous, and it's going to be so memorable.
Maybe it's a callback to EverQuest when we did the Mad Run from Kinos to Freeport, or Freeport to Kinos. Maybe that's what this is hinting at, but
it's so perfect already. I can't wait. But okay, let's just keep going. So the one thing I want to point out with the kind of Thronefast related concept pieces, because I know we kind of went straight to the 3D here, so I want to give a little bit of credit to Leo, who has an amazing name, by the way. It's the kind of pseudo 3D blockouts. It really looks to me, and this may just be a concept that doesn't mean much, but it kind of seems like Thronefast itself is going to be going through a lot of big changes. And I don't know about you, but do you remember the building of a city stream like way back?
Yeah, of course.
Dude, that was one of my favorite streams, right? We saw a lot of 3D in that. We saw a lot of 2D, really great 2D artwork as well, but we did see some 3D, and I don't think all that's like wasted or anything, but I have this sense that a lot of the layout that we saw from years ago is also changing. Because since then we've gone zoneless, right? So, but like in a way, I'm kind of glad that we didn't see the finished product back then, because a lot of people were asking for it, and actually, I'm kind of thinking it may have like never been really finished or like built out on the inside, at least. Obviously, we've seen the outside a lot. That it's pretty staple architecture, but I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to maybe like a building a city Redux.
Redux. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it might be kind of cool. I would, man, I loved that old one. And there were so many neat things in there, especially the temples. So they talked in that video a lot about the temples to Coursera, which we actually heard about on this stream as well. So a call back to that. But some of the other deities of the humans on Terminus, we saw that, and I'd be curious as to see if because it was really sort of laid out. Like the design the market was in one place, the arches were in one place, the barracks were in one place, and it was I liked the layout of it. So if they'd show us an update to that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I was thinking like it might be a bit of a troll target, right? For the people that like remember how long ago that stream was, but I don't know. I think it would be great, and the kind of view of the inside, especially that dock area. Oh my gosh. I think it would just
that was new. We've never seen those docks before, and that was something that I was excited to see in a 3D rendered picture, because that was pretty that was new.
It felt so right. But yeah, I mean, on that note though, about Thronefast being kind of the main city that we have seen in public releases, right? I think it would just be entirely appropriate, and maybe be kind of the place that they show before any other cities. Like even maybe through alpha, depending on how they do the public, how publicly viewable it is. But like, do you think they should maybe show Thronefast kind of in substitute of like maybe the other King's Reach cities for now? Or
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say no.
Well, like,
I'd rather
if they're like, hey, by the way, we have Fairthale. Like, should we?
Well, no. We've already seen. You mean Fairthale, the city, like the actual elf starting. Oh, I would choose that in a heartbeat. 100%.
Okay.
I want to know where I'm gonna live. This is my future home, man. I gotta check out the environment and what's available, so I can stake my claim on a good house there.
Well, okay. Well, hey, this is great, because I disagree. I think they've shown enough Thronefast that if they showed kind of a start to finish, or at least like all the way to the end kind of a thing, I think that would satiate a lot, where keeping all the other the other big cities kind of not public as long as possible, to kind of keep a little bit of surprise in there, I think would be nice.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Nah,
you're probably right. I think I'm just probably being greedy.
I get it. I mean, if you are talking to someone that's maining an Archai, and we don't know anything about our city, like Suro is a whole question mark. But yeah, really quick shout out on the whole staffing thing though. They actually got another art hire that's not listed on the website yet. Joppa mentioned their name, which is Esther, who is another 3D environmental artist as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing yet another name on that very quickly growing art team, which is at 10 people now. So, soon to be 11. Like, dude, I feel like literally just yesterday, it was like 3 people, right? It was like Jared, Ross.
Steady growth, man. Steady growth. We keep saying it, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, to me, it's almost verging a little like a little too fast, but not in a, that sounds really negative. I don't mean that. I just mean like they're growing quite fast in comparison.
I understand. You're just cautious, right? Everybody, you're just being mindful of it because we know the industry, well enough.
Yes, but we also know everything that they've been through, and I'm sure they've learned a lot.
Know it better than we do. Yeah, they know it better than we do, 100%.
Well, okay, so there's a good thing mentioned here while we kind of started getting to the 3D stuff, and that was the modularity side. And Joppa mentioned that the Throne Bastion buildings were modular, at least, that's what they're talking about in the video. I'm sure they're going to translate this elsewhere, but in that sense that they can use all these different combinations of walls and doors and windows and roofs and stuff. And I've got to say, one thing that I am always apprehensive about with modular kits, which are, pretty much industry standard at this point, is it's kind of an entirely different art form in itself when it comes to putting all those pieces together in a way that makes the modular builds not look like modular,
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just really easy to tell sometimes. And I'm sure a lot of people can think of certain games that, look very much copy pasty. And being that it's kind of a big gripe of a lot of people, including myself, like we had like Vanguard, and I'm going to dunk on Vanguard a little bit because they literally use the same house like 30 times in different parts of the world.
Desrin is dunking on Vanguard.
I know.
Okay, somebody mark this on the calendar. Desrin is taking shots at Vanguard now.
Yes, I'm so, yeah. But yeah, it was a big thing that's like super noticeable. And, I could defend why they might do that. But the truth is, it takes away from POIs when you're like, oh, I've seen this before. And I gotta say, what they showed from the modular kits with the Thrown Fast like residential buildings or whatever you want to call it, I thought it was pretty dang decent. Like I have some really kind of minor gripes, but being that this is like super new stuff, I think it's super solid. Like I think like hopefully they can maybe do a bit of a decoration pass later on to make them look a little bit more like built into the environment, because that is something that I'm starkly aware of being a Vanguard fan. Just stuff that just looks like poof, just placed. But as far as like differentiating themselves from one another, I think what they showed in the stream is a really good start. Like, showed several locations that I would say looked recognizable, but pretty unique. So, good job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had no complaints. I thought they looked very well put together, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they're using them, because like you say, when you do notice the repetition of an asset over and over again, it definitely is noticeable and takes away from the experience.
Yeah, so it's good to see they're already started on a good track there. I did want to point out, so this came up, and I'm going to emphasize this probably several times, but Joppa said that, they haven't even got all the bells and whistles hooked up, right? There's definitely still a ton of world building to do. I mean, they just hired so many people. So what we have, as great as it is, there's still a lot to look forward to. Like he mentioned, more biodiversity. We talked about the color, and, of course, more points of interest that he said, like, they don't want to give them all away, right? And so if you go through all this footage, you're going to find so many possible points of interest, and that's just the start. And I don't know, man. That's what's so exciting. I'm a huge Vanguard fan because there's so much content. I have a list of all the dungeons in Vanguard. It's like 105 dungeons or major points of interest, and it's a big thing for me and for open world games to have that many points of interest. But also just that what we're looking at now looks great, and as Nathan put it, it looks better than we probably ever expected. Mm-hmm. But I know it's going to be better.
Yeah. Well, one of the things they said on stream was that this terracing effect that we talked about earlier actually doubled the play environment, like doubled the area that they can create upon. And, you're talking about, having, lots of points of interest, lots of areas, lots of things to do. This is doing that with something that they're like, it's integrating with the climbing mechanic that they're really leaning into so hard. So it's meeting multiple goals with one sort of creative effort.
Yeah, and I think what I said on Plus U, I'm going to stick to this, in that I feel like what we are at this stream is closer to final now versus in May. I felt like what that was closer to start, right? So while it's really encouraging, both because there's obviously a lot of progress in a few months, but also just because there's still so much that they can do moving forward visually, as well as obviously points of interest in filling out the world. But, they talked about, some lighting effects and the clouds and various things. It's like, these are little additions that they're going to probably be able to just keep adding. And Pantheon's going to be a pretty good looking game, I think.
Yeah, that came up on the stream on Plus U as well, when we were talking about other games made in Unity that have a, high graphical fidelity. And Tarkov was the one that I guess is the standard bearer for graphical fidelity in the Unity engine. So, I mean, I haven't played Tarkov. I can't speak to it intelligently, but I can tell you that, like you're saying, the game, like, Pantheon's in a good place. It looks good.
And it's just another point to say, like, they're not held back by Unity, They are a small team, so, we're not going to expect 700 developer, every detail being crazy, but, like, they're doing a lot with what they have.
They're maximizing what they have, the resources that they have.
I think so. And I think I'll throw like one last thing in here. So Steve Clover, Joppa did kind of mention that he had been working with them already for a bit, right? And he just kind of said, I think it was like, oh yeah, he busted out the bank system. And, they're already running down the home stretch of the near-death system. Apparently Steve has just been like cranking out these roadmap things.
Yeah. Well, on Nathan Napalm did a video, just in the day after this. And one of the things he said in the video that I didn't pick up on the stream was that apparently, Steve's been on the team already for quite a while, and they just haven't announced it. Like he didn't just start yesterday or the day before the stream. Like, he's actually been there for a little bit already. So I'm not surprised to hear that quite a bit has been accomplished.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll probably see that on the newsletter too. But okay, I know I'm like I kind of took over this section. And we the hard thing for our viewers, the hard thing is this still isn't enough. I there's so much in these streams now that this is a complimentary thing to remind you, but there's still more to discover. If you haven't checked out the stream, definitely do it. Hopefully we help you point out some things that you may have missed or something like that. But I want to go through each piece of art, each screenshot, every video clip, because like there's just so much. But I'll leave it with this Joppa quote, okay? Because I know we have to move on. But Joppa says, "The world has really started to become what Terminus was meant to be and what we've always desired it to be." And that is exciting. I said it.
Very exciting. Yes, very exciting. Absolutely. And the hype is real, man. So I'm right there with you. So that's the VR news for the week. Let's take a quick look at the notes. We're at the Pantheon Plus calendar here for you for the week of July 18th to the 24th to see what content we're working on and going to keep everyone busy with. Midnight, of course, Drax playing EverQuest with the Midnight crew. That's on our Twitch channel at midnight Eastern. Tuesday, 9 p.m., we're back to EverQuest for MMOs 101. That's our Tuesday night group, 9 p.m. on our Twitch channel. On Wednesday, Drac is preparing for the Naked Gnome run. So I don't know what that means, but he's got a video lined up. Apparently, he's making some preparations for the July 25th EverQuest Naked Gnome run that he's putting on. So that'll be fun. Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, Sparrow is streaming some classic WoW on her Twitch channel. And 9 o'clock on Friday, Redbeard Flynn is doing a piece about Monsters and Memories. That's another MMO that's in development that's very classically spirited and done by some experienced developers. So he's looking into that game. Sparrow will be back streaming Friday evening on her Twitch channel, playing some P99. And of course, Nathan Napalm and Cringe Pony TV is doing their Saturday night late night MMO show. That's 11 p.m. Central, midnight Eastern on his YouTube channel. And yeah, that's it for the week of the July 18th to the 24th. And it's not on the calendar, but there may be another surprise coming this week that we've hinted at before. And I'll just say this, if you're not subscribed on YouTube to ManOPfRohan, his channel, you might want to do so now, and you might want to turn on notifications, because that's where this little surprise is going to be showing up first.
Oh, yeah.
There will be a link to his channel in the video description and the show notes. And that's all I'll say about that, because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. But that is it for this week's VR news and notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right, so because I kind of dwelled on that first section, a bit long, we're going to hit a really quick community discussion. And I say really quick, but you'll see. We're going to have to save our spotlight for next week, which, I'm sure there's going to be tons of stuff in that episode as well. But I didn't want to skimp out on all these sections, so I'm pulling a bit of a philosophical one here, just because I think it ties a little bit into the stream. We never take too long in philosophical discussions, right?
Yeah, a quick philosophical debate. Is that even a thing? Can you do that? Is that even possible? It sounds like a paradox to me.
Yep. Yeah. I expect to fail. But this post is going to be from it's on the forums, and this is from a community member. So it's actually like community manager, because this is from Kilsin. And he asks, what matters most? The ability to select your own path or the journey? Explain your answer. Dude, I'm going to get right to the responses, just because we're going to have to. Yeah,
well, let's feature the community here instead of
exactly
instead of our ideas.
Exactly. So let's start with dispose list. And this is saying the choice means nothing if the journey is lacking. So the journey, I suppose. But I have to say, choice is part of any good journey. And a journey with no choices quickly becomes stale. Having said that, choices on a journey are way more than just picking a path, I suppose. Picking a path,
well said.
Is that really a choice, do you think?
Oh boy. Well,
let's just say good and evil. Let's just say good and evil. So there's like a good version of the game, evil version of the game. Is that a choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Everybody makes a choice. It's just the question is whether those choices, whether you see the results of those choices, or whether they are just what they are, and you would never know if the other choice had made a difference.
True. Okay. Then let's get to Sareem, who says choice, in my opinion, following a forced path because there is no choice might still be fun, but that's essentially playing on rails. I'd rather have the choice to go where I want and take on risks by choosing the more dangerous route or avoiding it if I feel like it. So a bit of risk as the choice. So, you might have a bit of a outlined journey. I say good and evil because I'm thinking of EverQuest 2 for some reason. You have your like good side, evil side. It's very straightforward. But technically they are different journeys. And eventually they kind of merge up. We don't need to talk about that. But the ability to choose your danger, I thought was very interesting here. Because...
And see, this is... Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, because I actually feel this in a lot of games that I don't want to say just level scaled games, but a lot of games I find myself never being able to find a challenge because the challenge has already been like set to be either completely impossible or too easy. And I feel this so much nowadays. So this answer it hit me.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. That's
I'm sorry.
Exactly what I was going to say. No, I just don't feel like we're not given the option to choose the dangerous path very, very often anymore. I think a lot of companies and game development outfits, especially AAA titles from big companies, have taken the mentality of danger hurts us. Danger, players dying and players feeling frustrated by something that forces them to push their limits a little bit isn't good for our sales. Elden Ring accepted, and Dark Souls in general as the exception, obviously, but they have that reputation and they can get away with it. But yeah, choice is not something that we're given a lot of these days.
Well, let's go with Vandrad here. So Vandrad says choosing a path is preferable to being forced onto one because nothing else exists. I've never played a game where the path the game developers railroad me onto ended up being better than the one I made myself. Oh, that was really good.
Yeah, one of yeah, exactly. You know, it's one of those instances of sometimes the desire is to create this really well-crafted story, but to do that, it's got to be very the guardrails have to be very close to you for it to play out the way they see it playing out or they want it to play out. And this is what I'm actually experiencing this right now a little bit because I've reinstalled ESO, and the quests, I mean, the writing is, you know, pretty good, but the quests are very straightforward because they really want you to experience it the way it's designed. Right. So you don't really get you don't get that freedom to, what if I don't want to help this person in town? Do I get an option to murder them? You know, like, why am I not given that option? You know?
Yes. I think, I'm actually thinking back to, I think it was last week's episode when we were trying to, like, how do you explain an MMO to a non-gamer?
Yeah.
And what this answer makes me think of, that, you know, I've never played a game where the path the game developers rode me into ended up being better than the one I made myself. It makes me think, instead of, like, I don't want to play an MMO to just have a singular path. I would rather watch a movie because exactly. It's the same thing, right? You know what's, like, you know, usually movies are fairly predictable, but it's a linear path. You're on it, and there's no wiggle room. But I enjoy movies. Not to say that's not a bad thing, but if I'm playing an MMO, yeah, I'm quite the opposite. You know, I want to choose my own path because, yes, actually, I know we're kind of getting a little philosophical, but Thunderleg kind of takes it to another level, and I just got to say this. And Thunderleg says, if choosing a path is not illusory, then the journey offers a revelation of self.
Well, you got to read that. That's one you got to read like 3 times to really sink in, because it's very
It's
deep.
True. And this is like the whole post too, which is beautiful. But it says, if choosing a path is not illusory, then the journey offers a revelation of self. As in, if the path that you're choosing is not obvious, you know, if you don't know you're on a road, then the journey can still give some sort of revelation of self.
It tells you about yourself. It tells you about who you are and what's important to you when you look back at the path you chose, because you made those decisions based on some sort of internal values, some sort of, you know, mindset, beliefs. And, you know, when you aren't allowed to create that path based on those, it's, you know, you're limiting what kind of discoveries you can make in both internal and external. And again, we're getting super philosophical here, but it's like, you know, I get it, man. Like, I totally get it. I've played games where I look back on the how it played out when I had real choices to make, and I'm like some of the super giant games, like Pyre is a good example. You make tons of choices in that game, and I look back and I'm like, I know why I made that choice, and I understand more about myself as a result. So I think that's what Thunderleg's getting at.
Yeah, that was a killer one, Thunderleg. And now we get to you know, regulars. I think most of these folks are regulars, but hey, you know, if you post on the forums this much, like, you're probably going to get on the show. But Dorothea, another regular, they kind of seem to be maybe a little bit on both sides. So they say, I far prefer having choices. Doing the same zone in the same order for the same reasons gets old fast, especially for an altaholic. But then they say, I have played really crappy sandbox games and well done playing on Rails games. A good game, a good journey matters more than having choices. So it's a bit of both. To me, it sounds like, oh man, if you're doing the same thing over and over again for altaholics, it's really bad. And I despise this about, you know, I hate redoing stuff. Well, but if each alt has its own particular path, you know, even if it's just like this class does this class does this, it at least helps, I think, is what's kind of being said.
When you get out of the MMO space and into like more narrative story-driven games, that's what they should be doing. They should be very much a straight line. If they're trying to tell a story, do that. You know, I'm thinking of, like, you know, there's a lot of games that are very like, you know, Tomb Raider or like the Uncharted
Oh, yeah.
games or like these very narrative cinematic type of games, it's like watching a movie. You know what you're getting, and that's what you want. I don't want choices in those games. I want to be told a cool, exciting story, and I'm the character playing it out. MMOs are a different breed, right? They're a different type of game, and we're being given a world, and if your world has no choices, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yep. Then we'll get to Dagny Stout here, saying, I'll add that I prefer games where the paths we choose do not all end up in the same destination. That's what makes the journey interesting to me, especially when we talk to others who have chosen a different path. It seems that too many games offer the illusion of choice, but at the end of the day, everyone ends up with the same reward, same item, etc. I realize that can be a turnoff for some people, but like someone said earlier, that's what alts are for. So how often, like, this is just so poignant because it's like a lot of times in these games, you can feel like you're making choices at first, but then you always end up at the same end game. You're always doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's and as soon as I realize I'm playing that kind of a game, I usually stop, to be honest with you.
I think so too.
I really do. I don't continue, a lot of those types of games, and because I don't feel like I have any agency. Again, if I know what I'm getting, that's different. But when a game says, the path is yours to choose and your choices will matter, and when I realize that they actually don't, then I give up.
Right. And that's kind of what I alluded to with like the EQ2 thing, starting, good and evil that have very distinct, different zones, different quests, etc. Factions totally different. But then by the end of the game, everyone's working together. We're all doing the same raids. We're doing the same. It's literally just everyone's together in the same. So why does it even matter that you chose one or the other? Takes a lot of the wind out of the sails there. Okay, there's actually a lot more responses, but I'm just going to take a long one for the last so we can get through this real quick, but it's a good one. It's a good one. And this one's from Jobson. I'm going to read the whole thing, so it's just going to take a second. Jobson says, I will pick selecting your own path, I guess, because you got to live with your choices and move on. No do-over buttons for the sake of a forced journey. If you are a known murder hobo, you can't be hailed as a hero because the quest demands it. If you leveled up as an ogre, you can't just race swap to be a human. If you spent all your time grinding in a dungeon, there'll be plenty of people who see you as a nobody. If you put 100 hours into mastering defensive abilities, you can't just flip to offensive. I don't want to be taking the exact same path as every other person or person of the same class. I don't want to be in a group of 1,000 chosen ones for the sake of the journey. I don't want everyone to be Flavor of the Month clones because the class journey wants everyone to overcome the same obstacles. I want choices to have consequences. So this is about the path that is irreversible.
Yep. That's really well said. I mean, there's a little bit in there in terms of like, too many choices lead to, it's again, it's a sort of a paradox a little bit. Too many choices lead to the same outcomes. If anybody can just flip classes, races, skills, then we all lead to the same place. But that's giving the player too many choices in that scenario. So it's not always about like having unlimited choices. It's about making
the weight of the choices,
creative.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And making those choices fit into what the game's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And while also respecting the player's agency.
Yeah. Yep. I think the example that pops into my head that is a little bit good, a little bit bad here is Mortal Online 2, because you technically only have one character, and you cannot do everything. That's for sure. And in fact, you can't even really do. You really have to find your slice in that game of what your character is going to be. And you are disadvantaged in all the other things. And I found that to be very novel in the MMORPG genre because there's more that you can't do than you can. And while in Mortal, you can change your stats. You can lower one, increase another. There's always this trade-off. And you can't do it quickly. Like none of the skills of that game are just like, oh yeah, flip it off. Like I think of, I'm thinking of EQ2 too much, but they added this thing where You could just go to your house and you have all these like preset AA builds, and you could just like switch to a new AA build, and then eventually they just made it so you could do it on the spot as well. And it took a lot of the weight away. Like you are no longer, I no longer have to be a turtle spec druid, because that's what I was a long time ago. I could be turtle spec, and then I could switch over to melee spec, and then I could switch over to, whatever. And this isn't to say that the LAS loadout changes are like this. I'm more comparing to the overall build. Like, I would love it if in Pantheon we get to a point where you actually have a little bit of differing play, in a sense that it might even make conflict with like factions, for example. Like, oh, you are this faction with this, group. I'm the opposite. Like, how are we going to figure this out? Or do we find a new area to go? Or, that kind of weight, I think, makes your character feel so much more unique. In spite of probably not, quote, feeling good, right? That's definitely the side I lean on, is like, I don't care if I can gimp myself. Like, I value the uniqueness of the journey. I think the choice having weight more than it all works out in the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. For sure. I agree.
Well, that was a lot of soapboxing. So I think it's time we get into some really, really cool stuff, just to finish it out on a super high note. So thank you everyone for sticking around. And that has been the community discussion.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. All right, last week we started Tales from the Fire Part 1, and that features Thalen Greyborn traversing a rock face in a place we've come to know as the Dead Storm Valley on the continent of Rainfall. Like a spider, her movements are deliberate and precise. She's blindfolded, and she's recalling the teachings as she relies on her senses to navigate the cliff. We learn the Dead Storm Valley is a place of violent tempests most times, yet on this occasion the skies are calm. As we pick up the story, Thalen lands on a rocky outcropping, lamenting this fact, and we learn that she's not there for exploration, but rather to hunt. So, listen along to the words of J.N. Gerhardt, Pantheon's lead writer, in this week's lore segment. Thalen felt the stark clarity of the night sky unnerving, in part because it was so uncommon. It was as if the darkness knew she wanted it to rage, and so it dispersed with its namesake malevolence. The serenity of the stillness was quite beautiful, and she nearly spit at the ground over it. On nights like this in Fairthale, the Adytum of Alos would have priests and civilians alike gathered at the bow of its towering height, their eyes like chalices for drinking in the night sky, their feet swinging recklessly over the edge of the temple's bow. But Thalen was not a priest. Her garments were made for war and not for worship. To her, the night was infidelitas for being serene. She wanted its howl and drear spread across the cliffs over the valley like a dirty old cloak. She wanted the wind to scream, and for her prey to think no one was mad enough to knock upon their door in a tempest such as this, because Thalen was just that mad. She loosened the knots that held the bundle of gear against her back. Out came a chest plate, thin and intimately fitted for her form, with matching sets of greaves for her arms and shins, a more suitable pair of boots, and 2 curved swords. The armor was minimal, and made to be fastened with the same wrappings it was carried in. The metal was light in weight and dull in finish, forged to enhance her swiftness and rely on her alacrity to evade direct blows. Thalen cinched on the breastplate and arm guards, sheathing one sword against the outside of each thigh. She slipped her thin boots inside a pair of thicker leather ones with heavier soles. The shin covering slid on last, and she bundled the remaining wrappings in a knot at the end of the dangling cord. Thalen was ready to enter the valley. She gripped the wall and hesitated, her throat dry from so many quick, heavy breaths. Just before she started to climb down, she heard a voice that slowed her heart and mind.
Father, are there no good rogues?
I suppose there are some.
Mother says there are none.
She descended the last few stories down the cliffside onto the surface of the Deadstorm Valley. As she started to run, the old, crusted earth popped beneath her feet. Why do you want to be a rogue, child?
I want to punish evil for hurting the good.
You want to make evil afraid.
Yes I do.
The hair on Thalen's neck was now dry. The hair on her hand was beginning to stand. A shrill gust kicked up dirt, and she raised her forearm to shield against it. And do you want to help the good find success as well?
Yes, of course.
Good. The gusts forced her to slow her pace. As she did, a shadow stretched across the uneven ground, swift as a hand to choke the light of the moons.
Can a rogue do both those things?
They cannot. More shadows snaked toward Thalen, these with volume and rotation. She felt the ground tremble as the gust that had kicked up into her face became a true wind, then swelled into a gale. It rose and began to twist, picking up more of the dust-laden ground as well as rocks and bits of bone. This debris swirled about Thalen and pelted her arms, head, and chest. She found it difficult to see, even harder to move. A crack of thunder echoed off the cliffs, and Thalen braced for the coming storm. Abruptly, the wind ceased. Thalen lowered her arm and looked around, her offhand finding the stone hilt of a sword. Surrounding her were 20 or more creatures with yellow eyes and twisting, shadow-like skin. Nightmarish was their appearance, but ordered was their assembly as they created an oblong corridor around Thalen and the path ahead. These were called the Children of the Valley, though nothing of their appearance was like that of a child. Their bodies had no muscle, no hair, and were instead an unstable shifting form. Their flesh was not tissue. Their skin was black, inky vapor, an anthropomorphic raiment that was ever swirling. This was the origination of the name the Storm-Clothed, used chiefly by the Throne Fastians, and so called because the tempest of their outer lair never rests. The term Stormcloth has become universal when describing their bodies. The limbs of a child of the valley could be 4, 5, or 6 in number, long and oddly bent, possessing long forearms that extended beyond the joint of the elbow. Their fingers were thin, yet the hand would often transform into a blade for cutting, a pike for stabbing, or a club for bludgeoning. Some even mastered a whip-like snare with their appendages. Their legs fell in line with this macabre design, bending with a low knee and capable of extending to great height. The head was centered around 2 large, sickly and glowing eyes that drew back along their head. The head that pulled back and pointed from the rear of what ought to have been a skull. Nowhere else on Terminus have the beasts been found, and only in the Deadstorm Valley would their unsettling form seem appropriate and at home. The enclosure they formed around Thalen gave her space to react if attacked, but they showed no interest in anything more than detaining her. Then one stepped out from the head of the ring, and each child's face turned toward him in unison. His outline was taller than the already sizable children, his shoulders unnaturally broad with vapors of twisting clouds emanating like thorns, shifting as if controlled by a wind under his own control. His stormcloth moved in a calm yet heavy pattern, falling into a thick mist that reached across the earth and crackled with small shocks of light. His arms wore sleeves of smoke, posed in a manner that suggested far greater intelligence than the obediently silent children. His head was a rounded spire of stormcloth, a volute that might have been more fitting on a priest than a creature such as this. His movements were slow and deliberate, carrying a grace that contrasted with the tempest of his attire. His face was a void, save for 2 yellow eyes that swirled like balls of flame. This was the host of the valley. "Why have you returned?" the host asked Thalen, his voice rippling with echoes of itself. The elf could feel his words through her feet, vibrating bits of rock with haunting amplification. The host brought his hands together, awaiting a reply. Thalen pulled her feet together to face him. Her posture softened, her breathing did not. She clung to the burning spheres of flame in his face with her own gaze.
To claim what is mine.
The host turned his face away, yellow eyes disappearing entirely. His head began to shift, from the featureless, swirling void to that of a pale white face. The storm cloth grew and fell like long, white hair around the cheeks of this new face, extending down to the ground like tranquil waterfalls. Thalen's throat constricted, but her body betrayed nothing. She knew that face, handsome, elven, in pain, a pain she shared. The host was wearing Thalen's pain as the face of someone she once knew. "Nothing is ours to own," the host spoke through the face, eyes black and empty. "Nothing is ours to give." Thalen's cheeks heated as the creature continued to pace, her feet refusing the order of her hands to fly toward the host with blades drawn. The host of the valley removed his head as if it were merely a bowl set on a table and held it in one hand. "What have you brought us as purchase?" he asked.
I told you, I have already paid.
Thalen shouted, her outcry ripping across the expanse. The host paused for a moment. The face she knew filled with sorrow, though the host's silhouette was completely still. The face began to hum a song, the tune of a children's fable popular in Fairthale. Thalen froze as it reached inside her ear, familiar and almost reassuring. She did not wince or look away as a tear fell from her eye, yet the host drew a hand over the face she knew. "Why have you returned?" The host repeated his first words to her.
To claim what is mine.
Thalen replied evenly.
"Have you brought what we seek?"
Thalen's rage withdrew behind the coverings over her face. Her eyes darted from the face she knew to the host and held it and back again.
I have not.
She answered.
It does not exist.
The face she knew was swallowed over in stormcloth, and the vacant head returned to the host's shoulders. His burning yellow eyes retreated into his head, and there returned in their place two spheres, crimson and polished like rare jewels.
"What have you to tell us about existence, elf?"
His voice deepened, the echoes now smaller.
"Your kind did not exist on Abazul until a millennia ago. You are destitute of knowledge as to how you came."
Thalen swallowed, and her hands embraced the handle of each sword as if they were rocks she hung on from the cliff.
"Until you find that which does not exist, you are unwelcome here."
After a moment, the host turned away, his swirling figure disappearing into the ring of children around Thalen, like a shadow fading in the darkness behind a setting sun. His final words cracked through the clouds.
"On that day, you shall have your purchase."
And that is the lore you know. Whew, there we go. 110 episodes done. Desrin, are you exhausted? That was
a long one. Thanks for humoring me. There were several times where I'm like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Yeah, you were committed at that point. You couldn't. There was no going back at that point.
Yeah.
So I just remember, everybody, if you enjoy our content, you can support Pantheon Plus by subscribing on our YouTube and Twitch channels. You can join our Discord for more Pantheon conversations, and you know all the rest. So advertising is not my strong suit, so we rely on a lot of word of mouth to keep this community going and have fun. So we've gone long today, so I'll just say with that, cheers, and thanks for joining us today.
Farewell.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at Desrin Does also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.